Mhm. Welcome, everyone. We have a full house tonight. In fact, so many people registered, we had to expand our platform plan to accommodate everyone. I believe that is a good problem to have. My name is Marcia Marley, and I'm president of Succeed Together, the parent organization of the Montclair Literary Festival. Before we start our program, I want to say a few words about the important work of Succeed Together's other programs, an organization with a proven track record of transformative results and whose programs are needed now more than ever. With the advent of COVID, Succeed Together's mission of closing the socioeconomic opportunity gap or achievement gap has become more urgent as so many more students are falling further and further behind. In fact, education experts estimate that the pandemic will add 6 months to the achievement gap. Rather than reduce staff and programs, Succeed Together responded to the crisis by quickly moving all our programs online and offering them free to all students. In addition, to counter the summer slide, we increased our free summer offerings to 25 oversubscribed virtual classes that included everything from algebra, violin, philosophy, and chess to girls' STEM club, poetry, and Mandarin, to name only a few. Moreover, these virtual classes are getting rave reviews. As the violin class ended, one parent of 2 children who were watching them play said, "Amazing, amazing. It's just an awesome thing they're doing, and I'm very proud of them." Last week, a poetry student said, "This was my favorite class. I wish it could go on and on and on." And one of our college essay class students, and a self-described terrible writer, produced a superlative essay, which of course boosted his confidence as he heads into that all-important senior year. If we are to sustain and grow our mission of providing equal opportunities for low-income children, we need your help. Please consider giving to Succeed Together to support our amazing teachers and staff. And in case you need more of an incentive, if you donate $200 or greater before the end of tonight's event, that means you probably have about an hour and a few minutes, you will receive an amazing goodie basket from Rayo's, the best pasta sauce you can buy. To donate, just click at the top of the chat box. So go up to the top of the chat box before the event ends. None of our events or programs would be possible without our generous literary festival sponsors, volunteers, and staff, as well as Watch Hung Bookstore. By the way, don't forget to buy the book if you haven't already. There is a link. It's green. You can't miss it. It's in the bottom of your screen. It is now my pleasure to introduce our Literary Festival Director, as well as Succeed Together's Program Director, Jackie Morez, who will introduce tonight's special guests. Jackie?
Thank you. Thank you. My power just went out, so sorry about that. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Our online festival will be held all day on September 12th, and will be free. More details to follow soon. All of our events will be on Crowdcast, and you can follow us there for more info, or on our website or social media. Tonight's book, Dirt, is available for purchase through Watch On Booksellers. You can click on the book button on the bottom of your screen to buy it. This is a free event, so please support our authors by buying the book tonight.
Yeah.
If you have a question during tonight's talk, you can add your question in the chat bar to the right of your screen. We are thrilled today to welcome Bill Buford, speaking with Ruth Reichl. Bill Buford has been a writer and editor for The New Yorker since 1995. Before that, he was the editor of Grandson magazine for 16 years, and then became publisher of Grandson Books. He's also the author of the best-selling books Among the Thugs and Heat. Ruth Reichl is the best-selling author of the memoirs Save Me the Plums, Tender at the Bone, Comfort Me with Apples, Garlic, and Sapphires, and for you, Mom, finally, as well as the novel Delicious and the cookbook My Kitcheneer. She was editor-in-chief of Gourmet magazine for 10 years and previously the restaurant critic for the New York Times and the food editor and restaurant critic for the Los Angeles Times. She's been honored with 6 James Beard Awards for her journalism, magazine feature writing, and criticism. I'm a huge fan of these writers. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
It's great to be here. So, Bill, let me start by saying how much I love this book. I know
Thank you very much.
when I told you the first time, you thought it was hyperbole, but getting ready for this, I read it again. And it was like I was reading a whole new book. I mean, I feel like every time you read it, you take new things away from it. And one of the things I wanted to ask you is, I know that the original manuscript you turned in was about twice as long as this one. So I want to read the other half of it.
It wasn't twice as long. It was about 3 times as long, and it was incomplete, and it didn't have an ending, and it didn't have a lot of things, and you don't want to read it. You don't want to read it. They were good adventures, but it didn't. We went to Lyon for 5 years. I had a year with Michel Richard. We had 6 years of life. Our children grew up with us. I learned the French language. I went through hell. I kind of arrived at a state of, I don't know, culinary bliss. We loved living in Lyon. We loved living in France in the end. There was such a big story to tell that mainly what I was doing was figure out what bits of the story really worked. I don't think, apart from the one little episode involving our children at the school, I don't think there's anything that I regret cutting, and I cut a lot.
Okay, well, I think, part of the charm of the book is that you obviously do love your life and love every part of it. You make us love it too. But let me ask you this. What got you, you were a writer, you were an editor, you did Granta. What got you interested in cooking in the first place?
I was always interested in cooking. Maybe I didn't get interested until I got to college, but I'd always had an interest in making food. At one point, I wanted to learn Japanese, and I learned Japanese cooking. And at one point, I learned Spanish, and I went to Mexico, and then I came back and I made all these original Mexican dishes for my roommates at Berkeley. And then when I got to England, I lived in England for 20 years. There was a real fascination in England with French cooking, mainly because English cooking has always been, and actually largely remains, just appalling. So there was this interest in good food, and my friends cooked, and I like cooking, and I like what happened at the table, and it's been something I've always derived a lot of pleasure from, and I've longed to work in a restaurant actually. So this whole enterprise has just been emancipating me into something that I've always wanted to do.
So there's a place in this book where you quote Anna Chapelle. A dish is arrived at not by following a set of instructions, but by discovering everything about it, the behavior of its ingredients, its history, and a quality that some chefs think of as its soul. So here's my question. Do you think it's possible to be a great cook without being incredibly obsessive?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going through some obsessions at the moment. It's true, but absolutely. I think, great, the great cooking of Lyon and that part of France was not obsessive cooking. It was learning the ingredients of the region and how they're prepared and how people used to prepare them before. And that Alan Chappelle quote is like, it's like a manifesto for me of cooking. It doesn't mean it's obsessed. It's that it assumes obsession. It's just when you're cooking a dish, you you learn the behavior of your ingredients at different times of the season, whether you have sweet peas or something like that. Like there's a moment when sweet peas are good, there's a moment when they're not, there's a moment when you got to do different things with them to make them work. It's the beauty of cooking. It's that mix of ingredient and preparation and heat, and it's something that's learned by doing a dish over and over and over and over again. It's like a philosophy of what goes on in the kitchen. It's a beautiful quote.
But he also says it's history. And that's not just ingredients and what goes on in the kitchen. I mean, that's, what you've done here is, go deeply into every ingredient, where it come from, the history of it, how it came to France from Italy or didn't come to France from Italy. There's a quality of, really wanting to get down into the dirt with every recipe that you're cooking. That fascinates me.
Yeah, that speaks mainly to maybe a certain kind of obsessiveness in me. I think you could also say the history of a lot of dishes is, your mother who cooked it before, your grandmother who cooked it before that, the people who, if you're lucky enough to live in a place like Lyon, have been cooking it for the last 200 years. But I do think, I actually do think that cooking gets interesting when you understand where it came from and how it came to be. And especially if it's cooking that arises out of the land, and you're maybe working with ingredients that people have been working with for 500 years, 1,000 years, maybe 2,000 years, maybe 5,000 years. And then it becomes almost an ecological expression, an expression of your place in the earth, as well as your expression of your place in your culture. And it's food. We like it, we eat it, it nourishes us, but it then becomes, it brings in all these other things that it's kind of like the mystery of existence. I love when I can get deep into food. At the moment, for instance, I'm going through a modest phase. I'm not going to say chickens. I'm obviously going through a pretty serious phase with chickens, but I'm going through a modest phase of turnips. Having realized that turnips were pretty essential part of French cooking until the advent of the potato. And then the potato kind of crowded the turnip out. But there are dishes that go back to the 1500s and the 1600s where the turnip is there making in a really kind of a star role. And it brings something that we don't often see in our dishes. I don't know, it's a combination of almost a fruitiness that comes from this bulb. It's I don't know, it's just, it seems to go deep, like all the way back to these Etruscans. It's I like that. That's where food, I like that because I probably have a kind of academic obsessive mind, but I like it because it relates the food to the earth, to being alive.
Well, you really made me, your bit about turnips here made me want to go out and buy some turnips and start playing around with them.
Turnips are really interesting. They transform in really unexpected ways. And with a little bit of heat, they caramelize and become sweet. And you can see why the French always used to serve them with duck. The Italians flatter themselves, and I think they're correct in flattering themselves, in introducing citrus is what you serve with duck. So, canard d'orange or something like that. It's the duck with orange and the duck with fruit. But the French always did duck with turnips, and it's a really earthy but still fruity combination that I find really rewarding. I went through a deep, I didn't write about it, but I went through a deep phase of going through almost all the 18th and 19th century recipes of duck with turnips, and they're fascinating. There's a lot of play there in a turnip.
Well, maybe you're going to make turnips the next kale.
It could be.
No American.
I don't know. I don't think so, but maybe.
And if you can make us all fall in love with turnips, you've done something really important. I want to ask you what you think this book is about. I can tell you what I think it's about, but what do you think it's about?
Oof. It's about probably too many things, but I think for me, it was about probably a straightforward thing, which is that I wanted to I wanted to understand French cooking in a deep and personal way, and wanted to connect to the place that made the food, and ended up being lucky enough to be a member of a family with my gifted Jessica, my gifted George and Frederick, where we could participate in the culture and actually learn food in this deep way. I guess for me, it's about finding people in a food, finding the origins of food. I wanted to learn French food, and I think I did but tell me what you think.
Well, okay, what I think is it's about the dichotomy of between who you are. You know, I mean, you have this exuberant way of facing life, a sort of gypsy spirit of throwing everything away. I mean, even with two tiny boys heading off into the unknown. I mean, at one point you describe it as unplanned, dysfunctional, erratically impulsive, the obstacle course of a life.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And, you know, you have that ability to be comfortable with newness instead of routine, which many of us envy. And as you have copped to, an inability to be on time. But at the same time, you have gone into this world which is really defined by rigor. I mean, you use the word, you know, rigueur. It comes up over and over and over again, that the French kitchen, you know, I mean, like, in many ways, you're the least disciplined person in the world, and you subject yourself to this impossible discipline, and you manage to gain the respect of everyone around you. And I think a question I want to ask is, because it's one of the things that everyone, I'm sure, will take away from this book, is about the brutality of the French kitchen. And you quote Dan Barber saying, "You can't get those skills anywhere but France." And I actually texted Dan to ask him if he still believes that that's true. And he said, well, it was true 30 years ago. I'm not sure it's true now. And then a couple of seconds later, another text arrived from Dan. But that kind of rigor, intense, focused, intentional rigor on technique, is still very much in the hands of the French. You could go anywhere now and get well trained, but the culture of the French kitchen, with its focus on technique, is something otherworldly, ingrained in the fabric of their cooking. I don't know that as a cook one needs that to be a successful chef, but it's the kind of training that seeps into your marrow. It becomes a compass point for the rest of your life in a way that is hard to experience anywhere else.
That's beautiful. He's a good writer.
Yeah, he's a wonderful writer.
He's a wonderful writer. That's beautiful. It's true. It's completely true.
And so then I said, okay, you know, just let me ask you one more question. Do you think it's possible to get that kind of rigor without the brutality and terror of the French kitchen? And Dan wrote back, "That's a very tough one for me to tackle." And then there was silence. But I want to ask you that because, you know, in this moment when, you know, it's a Me Too moment, when restaurants are going through so much about how horrible the culture of the kitchen is, what you write about here is, I mean, it is almost unimaginable.
I had no idea it would be that severe. I thought I'd seen rough kitchens in New York. It was nothing like France.
And I mean, you have this moment where Hortense is being, I mean, the chef, one of her coworkers is tossing pots at her and she's cowering in the corner. And you yourself get incredibly bullied.
Yeah.
And is there a way, do you think, to have a great restaurant without that kind of rigor? I mean, that kind of true terror that people go through to become chefs.
Well, there's two things. One is the rigor, and the other is the terror. You don't need the terror. And brigade system, I think the culture of the kitchen, that everybody goes through hell. It's kind of like it's like a boot camp. And then in the other end of it, you've kind of earned your stripes. You've shown that you can work under pressure, that you can take whatever's given to you, and then you're a cook. That is unexamined, indulgent, and fosters just unacceptable abuse. But the high standards of the French kitchen don't really need the abuse. I had a great experience because I had to go, no, I couldn't get into a French kitchen unless I got trained, and I went to the Institut Bocuse and I did this kind of intense training. And my best instruction was from a guy named Crope. And he taught fish. He taught all the fish in the sea and every French preparation for it. And it was insane. He wasn't abusive. He was just uncompromising. And I had my first moment when I was boning and skinning, filleting sea bass, and I'd done 20. And the guy next to me had done 50 or whatever it was. And first of all, he said, "Why are you so slow?" And then he looked at my fish and he thought, "Oh, this one's acceptable. Oh, but this isn't." And he threw them all away, one after the other. I mean, these fish, they had lives. They were caught. They were killed, one after the other. Like, wait, you're throwing them away. And then he said, "Why are you so slow?" And they looked back at me and go, "Oh, has nobody taught you?" I thought, no one stopped me. I just got here. What are you talking about? No, stop me. And then he showed me how to use the knife on the cutting board. It was like an early first lesson in the kitchen. But he didn't abuse me. He didn't make fun of me. He didn't sexually intimidate me. He didn't swear. He was actually kind of fantastic. I didn't want to be him. He will never be my friend. I wish him well in the world, wherever he goes. But the Reichl was there. And it was very instructive. I didn't need to be terrorized or kicked or sworn at just to learn it. So I think the system has become, because it's rough, because it's hard and it's under pressure and you're having to perform to a standard, it indulges really bad behavior, and it's completely unnecessary. And I think some of the best kitchens I've seen since I was in Lyon are kitchens run by women who are tough and uncompromising and impose the same rate. Would like toss out food one after the other, and they might call you like a toad, but there's not, the humiliation is in your failure to meet the standards. There's not all this extracurricular stuff. The extracurricular stuff is awful and weirdly tolerated, and I suspect that's going to end, and I don't think that will be the end of French cooking in the least. It'll just be the end of some very abusive practices.
Well, it's going to be interesting because I have never met an older French chef who didn't go through that. I mean, Eric Ripert talking about what he went through in Robuchon's kitchen is like,
yeah. Well, he was a famous monster. Horror stories about him getting. Who was it telling me? Someone who worked with him. There was a moment when he got pissed off at his commis, and he grabbed him by the lapel and he threw him down the stairs. And the boys down there at in a heap. And I think that was when he stopped cooking in the kitchen personally. But it was it indulges anger, and it does indulge abuse. But it's not necessary to learning what the skills of a French kitchen, which are really extraordinary. And Dan is absolutely right. I don't know if it goes into my marrow. I'm more inclined to say it somehow goes into my soul. It goes into my psyche. It goes into my database of unreflected mental habits about, when I'm standing at a cutting board, I use my left hand, my right hand, how I'm cutting, how I organize my ingredients. And if I don't clean up, then I hear Christophe from Mathieu Vienet's kitchen going, pop, 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 pop. It goes in deep, but I'm grateful for that. I'm really grateful for that. I wouldn't have got that, I don't think, anywhere here in the United States.
So let me talk about a couple of the chefs that, I'm so sorry that Michel Richard was not alive to read this book, because it would have given him so much pleasure. I mean, he I don't think ever got the respect or fame that he deserved in this country.
I agree. And love, respect and love.
And love. And he wanted it so badly. I mean, I put him on the cover of Gourmet once, and he was
fantastic cover, by the way.
It was a beautiful cover, but he was like, he almost cried. You know, he was, I mean, we didn't send the photographer to do a cover shot. It was just so beautiful. And he so embodied the French chef that I said, this will be a gorgeous cover. But talk about him a little bit, because the way you write about him is so beautiful.
Oh, well, thank you. Wow, he's a tender, transparent, needy, generous soul. He appealed to me because he seemed so not French. You know, there's a French, you know, whenever you see a French chef, they're always with their arms crossed. It's like, you know, that is the French chef pose. And you think, okay, all right, you don't want to have anything to do with me? Okay, fine, yeah. But, you know, it's a steer, it's detached, it's formidable. There's no sign of weakness. Michel is all emotional and kind of sloppy and funny, and he's often drunk, and he's way too flirtatious, and he's completely inappropriate, but he's just a beautiful soul. And he was absolutely the last person I needed to start with. He was the beginning of my journey because, one, I was in New York City and we had twin toddler boys, and I was in New York and he was in Washington. And the other is that he was so sophisticated. I just wanted to learn basics, which are pretty hard. I remember when I was just starting out on this, actually, the Gourmet magazine used to have these kind of like websites or like links to all that you needed to learn about French cooking. And I remember going through them and going, I'm never gonna learn this stuff. How am I gonna learn? I don't even know what these terms mean. And Michel was the wrong person, because Michel knew everything and reinvented all of it. So it was like a postgraduate class in another language. And I rarely understood what was going on until the end of his life. And then at the end of his life, or at least the last days that I spent with him, I realized, wow, he is really genuinely eccentrically creative. And he cannot do anything he would not make anything. He would not make a sandwich if he couldn't invent it himself. He couldn't make, you know, he couldn't make a Parisienne. He couldn't make a, you know, ham and butter and a baguette unless he made it different. He couldn't do what people have done ever. And that impulse is, well, in some ways it's a writer's impulse. I mean, you know, a good writer doesn't want to make a sentence that other people have written and trying to come up with word choices, but his is like cosmic, really basic things like pastry. He would make them all different. And I realized, wow, what a brain. What a big heart, but what a brain. What a beautiful, beautiful man.
One of the things that I always loved so much about him was, I mean, a lot of chefs don't really love cooking. It's a it's a métier, but he loved cooking.
He loved cooking.
He was really unhappy when he wasn't in a kitchen.
Yeah. And, which is what happened in New York. And when he was in New York and he tried to open up a new, he couldn't touch the food. You know, he touched a cook, and he wasn't allowed to touch a cook, and you know, he's very touchy feely, and he loved. Yeah, he would get. I remember once he came. You know, I'd see him in the mornings, and because I stayed down in Washington during the week, and he'd come out he's suddenly really excited about a banana, like what a banana is. Isn't it like, you know, like it's kind of like a custard, and it's like, no, it's this, it's that, it's like a vegetable custard, and all the things, started thinking about all the things you could do with a banana. And I thought, well, no, I haven't thought about a banana before. That's very Michel, very Michel.
And the other chef that you write about a lot is Daniel
Boulou,
who becomes incredibly important in your time in Lyon.
It seems really stupid that it took me so long to discover Daniel. I knew Daniel before we left. I was looking for a way to get to France. Daniel was in the neighborhood. He was in New York. We were in New York. I didn't know that Lyon was this treasure. I had prejudices about Lyon. It was only when Michel and all the people in his brigade said, "Oh, Lyon's where you got to go," and then I realized, oh wow, Daniel. I think the most amazing. Daniel is accomplished, generous, beautiful soul, loves his food. But the most interesting thing for me was that the Danielle I met in Lyon, and we kind of became friends very gradually. He always kept thinking that I didn't want his interventions or his help, so he didn't intervene and he didn't help. And so many times I think, Danielle, help me, help me, help me. But I saw him a lot because I saw him every time he came to Lyon to see his family, his parents and his siblings. And he came a lot. It was a very big, important part of him. I remember once he came right before Thanksgiving and he had a great time with his family, and then he caught a plane. He was changing flights in Munich and he wanted to taste the Boudin Blanc that they make in Munich. And then in the middle of it, he realized, I have to go back. I have to see my family. And he said for the first time ever since he opened a restaurant in New York, he wasn't there for Thanksgiving because he was just missing his family so much. And he was, what I saw about Danielle in Lyon is so different from the Danielle you see here. He was relaxed. He was sentimental. His face had a softness to it. It was full of feeling. He was a peasant's son, very close to his father. And he became that person. He's so different from the, flashy, big dishes, expensive diners, man on the scene, and very, always very, but there he was. And I mentioned in the book at one point, I was taking Danielle to the Les Albecus, the indoor market, and I was dropping him off, and he was going to buy fish to cook for his family that night because his family never gets fish because they're farmers and they don't. So he's getting fish. And I said, Danielle, you're different here. You're like really, really different here. You're like a completely different personality. And are you aware of that? And he very tenderly said, yes, but I've never known how to describe it. And I thought, oh, you sweet man. You sweet, sweet man. I love meeting Danielle there. I loved meeting there.
One of the things that you make so appealing about Lyon is that it's very much like a small village. So, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that he reverted to who he was. I mean, you ended up knowing everybody there before you were done.
We did. Yeah.
I mean, you really make, I mean, I think of Lyon as a city, but the Lyon that you inhabited was, in that world of food, everybody knows everybody.
They do.
And, it's very appealing, that life. I mean, it's not anything like what would have happened if you had gone to, say, Paris.
No.
And you really became part of the life of the city in a way. I mean, that's just so lovely as it unfolds in the book that, we have to talk about Bob a little bit.
But with that first point, though, Lyon became a character in the book. Lyon becomes kind of like what makes the book, I think, unusual for me is that it's about Lyon, but it's not. There's not actually that much that I write about Lyon, but it is about Lyon, and a lot of that was because we had children going to the public school. And the public school, L'École Robert Doisneau, was like, I had a little office in our apartment and I could see the door from my window. It was just there. It was right next to Bob's Boulangerie. And Jessica got involved in it was a teacher parent organization. So she got involved in policy. So she got really hard in it. But my big, I'm not even sure if I wrote about it, but I did it in some draft. But my big moment was when I volunteered to be a lifeguard for the swimming lessons. Oh, doing well. And so they have a policy where they would take the children for swimming lessons. I think it was just once a week, maybe it was twice a week. But the teachers couldn't go into the pool for whatever legal reasons. So they needed parents to go into the pool. The parents had to pass a very easy life-saving test. And so no parents signed up. So they never, for the previous 2 years, they hadn't done these expeditions. You sign up for the whole year. So I signed up for every single one and humiliated all the other parents, and then they all joined up, and then it all worked. I then got to know the students in these desperate moments because most of them had, I mean, a few knew how to swim, but most didn't. And I learned all these students in a very intimate way, and it opened up our little quartier for me because I'd be turning around the car and some child would wave to me and the parents would go, "Who is that?" And then I'd sort of introduce myself, and it was just a little thing, just how we got really, we knew everybody. We not only did we know all the chefs and the cooks, but we knew everybody in the quartier. I remember after we left, I came back and I couldn't get anything done because whenever I went out the door, I'd say hello, and I would talk to someone there. And it was like living in a village. It was really like living in a village. And we miss it. We still miss it. It's fantastic. We didn't want to come back.
But you did. I mean, you said if you had stayed 8 more months, you could have become French citizens, but you came back. It's hard to understand.
It's not. It's really simple. We ran out of money.
Oh.
That's all it was. We ran out of money.
And if you hadn't, you would still be there?
Yeah, in some capacity, definitely. Yeah. I mean, in many ways, we're happy that we did come back because our children were really on the verge of becoming French. And now, with a little bit of struggle, a little bit of work, they are very American, very fluent in English, and still French. But yeah, we would have stayed. Yeah, we would have stayed. In some capacity, we would have stayed. Yeah.
So one of the questions that came up earlier is, what do you think your boy's best memory of Lyon is?
What do you think, Jess? I was about to say it's Bob's. It's if it's not Bob's bread, it's the goûter that they got at Bob's. Jessica's my first thought was it's Bob's. Bob was this boulangerie, which was, there's like within 50 yards of our apartment, there was the school, there was the bistro called Potager, and there was Bob's, the boulangerie, and that was our little circuit, and that was where the boys learned what a goûter was, and we spoiled them by getting a goûter from Bob's. No other parent would do that routinely, and that's where they discovered his bread.
So was the goûter bread and chocolate?
Goûter was like, yeah, pain au chocolat. Yeah, they discovered pain au chocolat and the baguette, and that was actually all they needed to know, and probably all they needed to eat, and it was fine.
Okay, so let's talk a minute about Bob and the bread, because, I mean, you sort of say once you finished the wheat that you brought back from France, you stopped baking. Now, surely you can get good flour here.
Yes, and I know Dan Barber is doing some.
He's growing wheat.
He's doing really serious stuff with flour, and he's milling it himself. And by the stresses and happenstance of finishing a book, I haven't gone up there, although he's invited us to taste what he's been doing. I haven't. I mean, even here, I'm talking to you from Maine, where there are a lot of really fanatical bread people. I haven't had the kind of epiphany in the mouth. Not an epiphany, just an awareness of length of flavor, fruit, complexity, aliveness. That is my memory of Bob's bread. And that was a memory that was activated by eating this bread in a place near Lac de Bourget, because it was milled nearby, that I write about. But
Well,
I've seen really, really interesting technical work with bread, and a lot of really interesting stuff with sourdough. But the way that flour was alive, I don't know that we've eaten it here yet. We should be able to, but I don't know that we have, and we've been trying.
Well, I would really like that for to be one of your obsessions, because I don't think there's anything better than really great bread. I mean, nothing. I mean, bread,
Nothing.
you know, hot bread and sweet, good butter. I mean, absolutely the best flavor there is on this planet. And
I agree completely.
it would be a wonderful obsession, but and I do think that there are people growing good wheat.
They have to be. You're absolutely right. I will conspire with Aunt Barbara.
And, you know, there's this whole, you know, laboratory at the University of Oregon where they have a bread laboratory and they are dealing with wheat and growing wheat. And I would love to see you go up there and communicate with them. I mean, it would be fantastic to be able to get, you know, really great bread. I mean, the kind of bread that you just can't stop eating. I mean, I've had it.
And you don't feel bloated from it. It's like it has this weird sense of nutrition. You're showing yourself to be the great editor that you were and continue to be as you inspire me off into my next venture, which unfortunately you don't have a magazine to publish it in.
No, but you know, we would all be very happy if you did that. Talk a little bit about, I was fascinated with this idea of you're doing le personnel, that you had to go in and make family meal basically for the staff and sort of do it out of your head. I mean, the pressure of that, to me, you didn't seem to feel terrible pressure about it, but I mean, here you're cooking for all your colleagues there, and it's their meal, right? It's the thing that's going to sustain them for the rest of service. And you took it on.
Jessica's pointing out that she's imitating reading through cookbooks. When I finally got tips what the ingredients were that I could cook with the next day, I would then get home at 1 a.m. and then be reading all my cookbooks to try to figure out what I was meant to do with them. It was very stressful. It was really stressful. It was really stressful. You know, what I hadn't appreciated is that it was a test. I mean, it was a test of many things. One is it's a test that you can produce a multi-plate lunch for French people, numbering between 25 and 30 every day at 11 a.m. because they eat lunch at 11 a.m., which I should say is a very, very good time to eat lunch. But what it was really a test was of your knowledge and your expertise. And like, sorry, here's the ingredients. What do you do? You know, we got poitrine today. What do you do with it? We got smelly sausages. What do you do with it? We've got nothing but potatoes. What do you do with it? And I had some experience by then, only because I'd gone to the Bocuse cooking school, but I didn't really have that command. And then eventually I could force my position and say, look, I'm here to learn. I'm not here to be tested. And it was a big epiphany moment between me and the chef. And he kind of went, oh, got it. Yeah, you're just here to learn. And then from that moment, it became much more comfortable. And he would tell me, like, you know, I could figure out what the ingredient was going to be the next day, and I could push to make certain things. But it was a fabulous test. It was really stressful. I was almost always late, characteristically. And then there was just a moment where it just got easy, and I just got insanely fast, and people would give me stuff. There's Friday. What the idea is that there was a protein usually Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and you made a meal out of the protein, and you did side dishes, and you asked people who had extra stuff, and you would put together maybe a meal of 6 or 7 items by 11 a.m. But Fridays, it was just leftovers, which it was horrifying in the beginning and just sickening. But by the end, it was fantastic. So fantastic, so liberating, and ingredients would appear in the last 30 minutes or the last 15 minutes, and you have to really, really, really fast and really, really fast. And you go, I can do this, I can do that, I can do this, I can do that. And it was like the greatest moments I've ever had in a kitchen. It was like I don't know, doing something really dangerous, like riding a motorcycle at 100 miles an hour, or skiing down a really steep slope. You couldn't think about anything else except this, what you're doing right there in front of you. And I loved it. And then, but at that point, they all trusted me. I mean, they knew I was a cook. They could give me, like Frederic giving me the legs of a poulet de Bresse, and he works at the fish station. And said, "What are you doing with chicken legs?" And this is like 30 minutes left to go. And he said, "Oh, they're going to go off if we don't eat." And then I could like figure out how to cook chicken legs in 30 minutes so they were not too tough and edible. And it made me a cook, and it was and that was the point. I'd asked Mathieu Vianney, the patron of Mère Brasier, if I could work on the line, and he said, "Only if I do the staff meal." And I couldn't do it at the beginning, and at the end I could, and then I was working on the line, and it was why I was there. I wanted to go through that hell, and hope that I could come out the other side of it and be a cook.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question from Juliana. When did you have time to write when your cooking days were so long? Could you talk a little about your writing process?
Oh, nobody wants to know about my writing process. Jessica's cackling in the other room. Like, you get every day you read these Paris Review interviews of writers, and how they get up in the morning and they use only pencils, or they have to know what they're going to write the next day, or they mention Ernest Hemingway. And no, mine is no. The best I could do when I was in the kitchen was make notes. And it was pure. It was pure research, but I was actually in the ideal spot. I'd stopped being regarded as a journalist. I was regarded as basically an essential stagiaire at a time when they didn't want to be hiring people, and the money was very tight. And it was a unique opportunity, and threw me into being really a member of the kitchen. But my real struggle was just making notes. I had a notebook. It wasn't tolerated that I would ever pull it out and make notes. So I would sometimes, go upstairs, go to the bathroom to make notes. I'd try to remember stuff at the end of the night. That was it. Sometimes on the weekend, I'd try to remember it.
Long days. You must have been so tired. I mean, the idea of going home after one of these brutal days and
they were long days.
Taking notes is sort of imaginable.
They were long days. Started at 8, finished at midnight, sometimes 1 a.m, and you had what was called a pause in the afternoon. And some of the cooks didn't even get the pause because they were having trouble keeping up with their prep. So they did 8 in the morning until midnight or 1 a.m. Fridays were later. When you leave, you've got so much adrenaline and energy, and that you have to unwind. And it was usually sometimes Jessica would be up. She'd be up on a Friday night, and we'd have a Beaujolais and probably cold chicken. Always chicken.
Okay, here's another question from Christian. As U.S. citizens, what was the biggest obstacle for starting your journey in Lyon, specifically for anyone chasing a dream in France with respect to housing, health insurance, jobs, finances, etc.?
There's just one obstacle, which is the French government. Apart from that, it's fine. It's fine. It's not a problem. But you got to go through the French government. I mean, all the cooks I know, like Dan Barber or Thomas Keller, they all kind of slinked into France. And I think they might have slinked in before the European Union was entirely codified. And things were more lax. Now they're not lax. And if you go in and you're there for any length of time, there's a very good chance you will get thrown out. When we were in Italy, it didn't seem to be a problem for writing heat, because we tended, I think I may have still had a home in Britain, but I don't know, but we tended to do a couple months in Italy, then go to England, we go out of the country. So we're basically there on a tourist visa. But when we're going with children, and it was Jessica who insisted that we should do it legitimately, because she had this horror of someone knocking on the door in the middle of the night and our having to pack up our children and leave the next day. we did it legitimately, and you can do it legitimately. You have
Well,
to promise to earn money, which becomes complicated, when you have to earn money. But there are rules, and if you can figure out how to get through the rules, France is very different from most other countries. If you meet all the criteria, you're fine, and if you don't, you're not. There's no judgment. There's no opinion. You could, they may not like your smell, they may not like your race, they may not like the way you talk, but if you meet the criteria, you're good.
It sounded grueling in the book. I mean, the hoops you had to jump through. And I mean, I remember some other things that you don't even talk about in the book about getting the apartment, which sounded just miserable. I mean, didn't you have to go to Danielle's father to guarantee something?
That was actually for the visa, because there is one, there's one crucial and very important classic catch-22 contradiction in getting a visa to live in France if you're not a European Union. If you're a European Union, there's no issues, but if you're an American, and that is, you have to prove you're trying to get a visa to be a resident. To get a visa to be a resident, you have to prove that you have a residence. And I had a coach at the consulate whom I got by way of my cooking a soft shell crab for the ambassador of France. And I pursued that, and they weren't going to do me any favors, but they did give me a coach, and he was very straight. It was good to have someone I could phone, and he always phoned me back. But yeah, that was the thing. You go to France, and you have to prove residence, and you have to prove it in the place you're going to reside in. Otherwise, they'll throw you out. So you can't use my friend in Paris who's going to say that I'm living with him or something like that. You had to prove your residence. It's with a document, with a lease, maybe an ownership, and your utility bills. And I remember it's how can I do that? I'm not a resident. How do I prove residency when I'm not a resident? And that's where blessed Daniel Ballou came to our aid and pretended to be his father and completely forged a document declaring that we were going to be residents in his old and sacred home. And I mean, we got it. So it's very easy to do as long as you can get away with maybe cheating a little.
So speaking of Danielle, when I told Marcus Samuelson I was going to be talking to you, he said, ask him about Danielle's birthday party and the ice carver.
What is that, Jess? Danielle's birthday and the ice carver?
You don't even remember it.
No, I remember the birthday.
Well,
you had a fight with some ice carver.
Oh, he was the ice carver?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I had a distinguished moment. It's true. Yeah. Yeah. I behaved a little badly.
Well, apparently Danielle said it never happened.
He's a beautiful soul.
So
his PR person was actually quite pleased, but yeah, there was a little. Yeah, I got a little carried away.
It was kind of an among the thugs moment.
Well, when you grow up a thug, you hang out with thugs, you sometimes have these moments when you regress. God, I didn't know anyone was there. Yeah, I don't think that's ever.
Okay, here's a segue. This is a question from.
I thought you were about to say. Here's a video. What? No.
Yes, and here's a video of you laying someone out. So often, working in a kitchen is a very young person's game. Did you experience any age discrimination or stereotyping based on your age? How did you overcome that? And this is note. I am not saying you are old, just older.
Jessica's cackling again. What are you thinking of? Oh, that yeah. I did have, God, maybe I've repressed his name. What's his name? The guy who was in my face the whole time. No.
Florian. Wasn't it Florian?
Florian. Yeah. There was a moment I had a 19-year-old who was my friend, and then he wasn't my friend. And then he became just nasty in a way that if I were a novelist, I would have found it very difficult to make credible. but he got really nasty. And there was a moment when he went off on my age, and he was addressing the poor Hortense, who's another stagiaire who had a very hard time there, but saying, Hortense, you have to lift the big boxes because Bill is very old and he is weak and he can't hold these boxes. And you don't want him to bend over too much because he's very old, and we want to be nice to him. And otherwise, surprisingly, I was treated like a peer. I mean, I wasn't, obviously. I mean, I was treated like a slave, Jessica's saying, but so was everybody else a slave. But I mean, the guys were older than, because it was a Michelin kitchen and Michelin ambitions. They were all around 30, which is old for a cook, maybe late 20s. But I don't know, it wasn't an issue. I did what I had to do, and the kitchen was so overwhelmed and understaffed that it really was a perfect situation for me. I just folded into the kitchen. It was proper professional training. It was hard. Jessica's saying it was very hard, but I mean, and some of them, they would go out drinking. I mean, you've done this day. When I finally got, I became accepted and blah blah blah. They would say, "Come on, Bill, come on, let's go out drinking." So they go out drinking at midnight. And I thought, no, I'm not going out drinking. No way! I've been here since 8 a.m, and then now you're going out drinking? And no. I like the idea of the fraternity and hanging out and everything I would gain by that, but no, I can't do that.
I am going to mention, don't forget to buy Bill's book. Click on the green button.
Thank you.
And I'm going to ask you probably the last question, which comes from somebody who is not identified, but misogyny is obvious in both Heat and Dirt. Are you not troubled by becoming friends and employee of these people? Do you have any commentary on it?
Oh, that's complex. That's good. I think the misogyny that I saw in France was not evident with the people I worked for or the people who became my friends, including Michel Richard, Daniel Boulou, Mathieu Vianney. The kitchen was misogynistic. Not uniformly, but it was a bad, one of the beauties of being in Lyon is that it's almost like sheltered a little bit from the rest of the world. When I got to France, everybody thought French cooking was finished. It was going to be Spain, it was Ferran Adrià, it was all this postmodern gastronomic revolution. But the French there hadn't heard the news, and they were carrying on in this really traditional way. So I kind of walked into an enclave which was probably 20 years behind the time, and it was wonderful for that reason. But I think some of the attitudes were 20 years behind the time, and I'm not sure that I would see a kitchen so crude and retrograde as the one that I saw there. And there, the misogyny was, there was one female cook, and she had a really hard time. And I've been in touch with her. She's left the kitchen. She just said it was a horrific experience. It was terrible, terrible, terrible. But the misogyny almost seemed to arise out of a almost giggly boys' confusion about women. I mean, they didn't know how to talk to women. They didn't know how to talk about women. They had this kind of crude sexuality, and it was the most infantile bit of the whole process. My whole experience there. The best thing that's happening. I mean, when I go there, when I was there, I didn't endorse it. I didn't like it. I didn't object to it as much as I probably should have, because I was in a position of being a guest, a journalist, and a kind of participant, kind of anthropologist in a way. But it wasn't. It didn't make me happy.
Years ago, I mean, this had to be in the late 70s. I interviewed a bunch of French women chefs who were rare in the late 70s. And they were complaining that Meilleur Ouvrier de France, the famous meuf, was ouvrier, not ouvrière.
Oh, good point. Quite
And,
right.
Has that changed? I'm not sure it's changed.
I don't think it has changed. It hasn't changed.
There are no women.
No, there are women, but it's just the muff expression doesn't acknowledge another gender. But in fact, most of the people that win it are men.
Because in those days, women weren't even allowed to compete.
Oh my goodness!
It was just
no, they yeah, I think they compete. Now I want to find, we want to find out. Because I sat in on some of the cooking, and I'm trying to remember if there were any women. I did see women. I think I saw women. It was mainly men. It was definitely
you didn't
mainly
mention any women when you invaded the muff.
Yes,
competition.
True. I have a memory of seeing women, but it might be. I don't trust my memory entirely. Now I want to find out. That would be, if that were still true, that would be profoundly shocking. And I do happen to know the people who are administering the MUF, which is Alan DeCoste and his camp, and they love the MUF. And they have great female chefs working for Alan DeCoste. Alan DeCoste has been very good at promoting female chefs and casting out male chefs in their place. I would be surprised if it's still the case, but if it is, that's we will find out. We will find out.
I mean, I think we're supposed to end now, but God, I could talk to you all night. Although I would.
Ruth, it's such a treat to be able to monopolize you and have you for me to talk to, and there's no one else at the table. It's just you and me. I love this.
I know. I love this too. We have to do this in person. I mean, meanwhile, tell me what you're drinking.
Well, I was going to drink a white Burgundy, which seemed perfectly appropriate, but today at this butcher shop that we go to called Main Street Meats in Rockport, Maine, there was this very appealing Magnum of Rosato, an Italian rosé, which you'd have to say is not entirely apposite for a discussion about French cooking, but it looks so appealing that it looks like I've already drunk quite a bit of the Magnum already. There we go. It's just, I knew nothing about it, but I like the butcher liked it. I liked its size. I liked that it came from the Veneto. I liked its color. We liked that the alcohol is only 12.5.
And what did Jessica think?
We've been enjoying it.
It's delicious. Highly recommended.
Jessica says delicious, highly recommended. A
Surprising
success, not very expensive at all. Everybody in the shop was looking at it because I think it must have just arrived going, oh, that looks really, really appealing. I thought, oh, that's what I'm going to drink tonight with Ruth. I'm really sorry you can't join me. We love French rosé, but we would recommend, and it's a throwback to Italy's maybe, I don't know, maybe that's appropriate.
Yeah, and we didn't even talk about France and Italy. I mean, there's so much more to talk about.
Let's have another event.
We'll have another event.
Good. Okay. Well,
After 2.
thank you.
Ruth. No. Thank you.
Best reader, ideal reader.
This was fun.
Really fun. Really fun.
I said salut, but you didn't hear me.
There we are. You need a drink. We have some here.
Thank you both so much. Talking about two of my favorite things, food and France. It's been a fantastic evening. I don't know if you can see all the comments in the chat. I'll send you, Bill. There's been a lot of suggestions of where you can get great wheat and flour. I will send them to you.
This is going to be a campaign. It's a campaign.
I think, yes, people have asked that you, yes, that's your next mission to find that for people. So I'll send it to you. Ruth, it has been fantastic to meet you and to have you here tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for interviewing Bill for us and moderating this talk. And Bill, again, can't wait to read more about chicken. Maybe not. But thank you so
Actually, yeah,
much.
there are some more things coming out about
If anybody
chicken.
hasn't seen
And
it,
I think it's something in the New Yorker. There'll be something in the New Yorker on the online.
oh yeah, somebody asked the question whether you are writing for the New Yorker anymore. But yeah, there was an article today in the New York Times, if anybody, and it's also online about not deboning, but boning a chicken.
It's true,
Right?
true. That's right.
Yeah.
I think there'll be something in the New Yorker this week
Wow.
about chicken. And there's a video that my sons made. We have these videos called Buford and Sons.
Oh,
Where they
a YouTube thing?
no, NewYorker.com.
Oh, New Yorker. Oh, great.
There's only been a couple, but we've got a few in the works now. And basically they film kicking my butt. And, even David Remnick, the editor of the New Yorker, emailed me once saying how much pleasure he gets in watching them kick my butt. This is they're 14 about to 15, and this is a unique moment in the chronology of our relationship. So we were going to try to make as many videos as we can until finally they thoroughly kick my butt and then kick me out.
I look forward to seeing them. Thank you so much, Bill. Thank you, Ruth. We have to sign off, and I just want to say thank you again.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ruth.
Good night. And I wanted to thank you all for coming today. We thank you for your support of the festival and Succeed Together. Thank you to Reagan Arthur, the publisher of NOF, who helped us to get Bill to come today, and also with Ruth. Thank you, Reagan, so much. I'm just going to share my screen. I wanted to play for you a little slideshow to thank all of our sponsors who help us put on our festival. Unfortunately, we had to postpone it because of the COVID health issue. And we will be having a one-day festival, as Jackie mentioned, on Saturday, September 12th. It'll be a short program of events, and then we hope to be back in person again on March 20th, 2021. Let's all keep our fingers crossed. And in the meantime, I want to thank you all for coming, and enjoy cooking, and see you all again soon. And good night.